Grandfather would weep in his grave if he saw this Julian. Walter's voice, the CFO, sliced through the steady click of a mouse in the meeting room on the 48th floor of the Aura Artisanal building, where glass and steel framed a distant view of Central Park's lush greenery. On the large screen before them, profit charts, growth metrics, and labor cost optimization plans flashed like a victory report. But Julian Croft, third-generation CEO, saw no victory. He saw only a black hole, swallowing the legacy his grandfather left behind, a small bakery once filled with the scent of flour, the laughter of bakers, and warm loaves handed directly to customers. Julian gripped the report tightly, his eyes fixed on a framed photo in front of him, a wiry old man's sleeves rolled up flour dusting his fingers, his face beaming with pride. Cut 15% of the staff at the flagship Soho store. Profit margins will exceed 22% next quarter. Walter's voice was steady, confident, as if reciting a mathematical formula. Julian snorted, cutting him off. "Do you know that store is where my grandfather started?" Walter didn't bother looking up, just shrugged. "We don't live on nostalgia. We live on cash, Julian. I've got that covered." A dull punch twisted in Julian's stomach. He suddenly hated the Tom Ford suit he wore, hated the gleaming Patek Philippe watch on his wrist. Everything was clean polished, but soulless. He snapped his laptop shut and stood abruptly. "Meeting's over." Walter raised an eyebrow. "We're not done." Julian's gaze swept across each face. "We're done. For me, it's over." He left the meeting room, abandoning the murmuring shareholders, the reports, and the sky-high numbers. He knew a bigger battle awaited. The elevator glided down. He stood before the large mirror inside, staring at his reflection, a polished, affluent CEO, far removed from the days his grandfather taught him to knead dough on an old wooden table. He touched his cheek, then tugged at his neatly trimmed beard. The mini razor buzzed. Beard hairs fell onto his white dress shirt. Julian stripped off his suit jacket, removed his watch, and tossed them into a trash bin in the ground floor lobby. Hours later, in a cramped rented apartment behind Little Italy, Julian, now Alex, wore faded jeans, a grey hoodie, and old sneakers bought in haste. In the mirror, no trace of the polished CEO remained. Just an ordinary guy breathing heavily, wondering, has the soul of Aura Artisanal died with grandfather, or is it just hidden by someone? He pulled up his hood-stuffed fake ID papers into his pocket. Tomorrow, he would start his first shift as an anonymous apprentice in Soho, and he swore to uncover the truth beneath that fragrant layer of flour at any cost. 4:45 a.m. Soho was still asleep. Only a lone yellow streetlight illuminated the rain-slicked cobblestone alley from the night before. Julian now. Alex pulled his hoodie's drawstrings tight, standing hunched before the glass door of the Aura Artisanal flagship store. He could hear his heart pounding, his hands clammy with cold sweat. Inside the bakery, the kitchen glowed like a brightly lit stage. Amid the cold stainless steel and shelves of expensive ingredients, a single figure moved. She didn't know she was being watched. Alex held his breath. He watched the petite girl, her hair neatly tied in a bun, her hands working tirelessly. Each motion, folding dough, rolling it, spreading butter, twisting pastries, was steady, rhythmic, like a silent dance. He heard the sharp chop of a knife slicing through dough, the low hum of the mixer, and the scent of melting butter seeping through the glass door's cracks. In the polished world of Aura, where he once sat cross-legged reading reports, he had never imagined this place could be so alive. The back door suddenly swung open. Marcus Thorne, the morning shift manager, appeared. He wore a tight black dress shirt, buttoned to the collar, with a mint candy in his mouth. "You're Alex, the new intern, right?" Marcus eyed Alex from head to toe as if looking at dirt on his shoe. Get in. Stay away from her. Alex glanced back at Alara, the name he'd overheard from personnel files. She was oblivious to the two men standing behind her. Her eyes were fixed on the dough, her fingers gently pressing its edges to make it rise evenly sculpted to perfection. Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. That's our baking witch. Rule: don't ask, don't touch. She's weird, but makes money. Let her do her thing. Alex said nothing. He nodded slightly, biting his lip to swallow his anger. She was the heart of this store, and this guy was talking about her like a walking cash machine. All morning, Alex handled menial tasks, wiping counters, arranging trays, packaging pastries, and learning to pour flour into the mixer. Each time he looked up, Aura was still in the same spot. Not once did she come to the counter or greet a customer. 6:30 a.m. Customers began lining up, stretching out onto the sidewalk. They held up phones, filming the freshly displayed Phoenix brioche loaves. Whispers rippled through Vance's pastries, the Soho legend. But Alara never stepped out. Alex stood tucked behind the counter, fists clenched. He understood. This woman wasn't just a skilled baker. She was carrying the soul of the store alone, in silence. And he would have to find out why. He stole a glance at the faint tattoo on her wrist as she rolled up her sleeve, a lone phoenix feather. That was the first clue to pulling back the curtain of secrets. Day 3. The Aura Soho bakery kitchen remained a maze of buttery aromas and mechanical hums. Alex had grown accustomed to handling hot trays without burning himself, to hearing Marcus berate others, though he never dared raise his voice at Alara, not even once. At 6 a.m., the kitchen was tenser than usual. A large, unexpected order had come in. Marcus barked commands, and everyone scrambled. Alex saw his chance. He deliberately stepped back and knocked over a tray of expensive proofing dough onto the floor. The costly ingredients spilled, sticking to shoes and stainless steel shelves. You pig-brained idiot! Do you know how much that flour costs? Marcus charged forward, face red, hand raised as if to strike. Before Alex could react, Alara stepped in. She stood between Marcus and Alex, her eyes locked on Marcus, her voice calm as ice accidents are part of the bakery. I'll handle it. Marcus gritted his teeth, stared at her for a few seconds, then threw a rag to the floor and stormed off. The kitchen held its breath. Alara said nothing more, only knelt beside Alex, her hands swiftly gathering the spilled flour. Sorry, Alex stammered, seeing her up close for the first time. The scent of butter clung to her hair, and the phoenix feather tattoo on her wrist glinted as she adjusted her sleeve. Don't apologize. Keep working. Alara's voice was soft, weary, but not harsh. During the lunch break, Alex manned the cash register for a shift. A customer dressed like a finance CEO, his Rolex gleaming under his suit sleeve, picked up a box of Phoenix brioche and smirked. Let me meet the baker who made this. The cashier froze, glancing toward the kitchen. Alara never came out, did she? The man shook his head, pulled out a crisp 100 bill and pressed it into the cashier's hand. Give this to her. Call it a tip. Worth every penny. Alex, standing nearby, saw the cashier hesitate before slipping the bill into the communal tip jar. When Alara returned to check the counter, she noticed it. Without a word, she took the bill, broke it into smaller amounts, and distributed them into the tip jars for the whole team. Not a cent for herself. Alex waited until she turned away before quietly asking a co-worker peeling apples nearby, "Is she always like that?" The co-worker nodded, whispering, "Alara, she's an angel. Takes the toughest shifts, never takes leave, and her pay's barely anything. Rumor is she's running from debt or something, but who'd dare ask? and you're out of a job. Alex looked down. In his mind, scattered pieces began to click. She wasn't just keeping the kitchen alive, she was carrying a debt of some kind and protecting the Phoenix Brioche name from something far uglier. For the first time, Alex felt pity, and he knew to untangle this knot, he'd have to dig through the very files he'd once signed off on as CEO, now as a mere apprentice standing amid this pile of flour. That night, Alex, or rather Julian Croft, returned to his true form, a CEO with access to the company's systems, sitting quietly in a cramped hotel room near the train station. He opened his laptop, logging in with the highest-level password. The screen's glow illuminated his haggard face, worn from 3 sleepless nights. In Julian's mind, the image of the phoenix feather on Ilara's wrist loomed like a giant question mark. First target, Aura Vance's personnel file. 8 years employed. Not a single promotion request. Salary is steady, but low for her performance. What made Julian frown was a monthly deduction, hundreds of dollars automatically transferred to a company called Apex Financial Holdings. Apex? Predatory lenders, Julian whispered through gritted teeth. He typed further, search Vance, across all historical personnel data. Within seconds, a name popped up. Liam Vance, master baker, hired 9 years ago, deceased 7 years ago. Cause off-hours workplace accident. Note, case closed. Julian leaned back in his chair, taking a deep breath. Liam, Ilara's brother. He switched to the product development archive. His fingers trembled as he typed the keyword Phoenix Brioche. The system spat out dozens of reports, but one title caught his eye. Phoenix Brioche proposal, Liam Vance, rejected. Julian opened the file, reading line by line. Each word detailed the recipe flour type proofing method, butter ratio, exact to the letter, identical to the secret formula Aura sold daily, branded as a new creation by the product development team. Julian's throat went dry. He dug into old internal email logs. One email, Liam Vance's proposal submission. Rejected. 6 months later, the same recipe reappeared under the name of a different product development director, one fired 4 years ago for budget fraud. Julian clutched his head, pressing his hands to his eyes. It was clear as day, Aura had stolen Liam's recipe. Liam had risked borrowing money to keep his small bakery afloat, hoping for a bonus that never came. An accident. Debt piled on debt. Aura carried it all silently for 8 years. The laptop screen reflected Julian's silhouette. He hated the man in the mirror now, the CEO of an empire built on the sweat and blood of the Vance siblings. Julian shut the laptop. He tilted his head back, exhaling heavily, muttering, "I'm sorry, Aura. Starting tomorrow, I'll take it all back for you my way." Outside the hotel window, New York's lights still burned sleepless. But tonight, in a narrow room, someone had decided to expose his own empire. 4:15 a.m., the Aura Soho bakery kitchen. The air was as cold and still as always. But inside, Alex, everything churned like a storm about to erupt. He entered the early shift, pretending to check the ovens. Aura was already there. She stood at the dough table, her hands kneading smooth round mounds, the golden light casting a glow on her neatly tied hair and the phoenix feather tattoo. Alex took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't keep the secret a second longer. He walked straight toward her. His voice was low, but firm. "Phoenix Brioche. It's Liam's recipe, isn't it?" The sound of the knife slicing through dough stopped instantly. Aura froze her hands, trembling slightly, the knife clattering onto the table with a sharp clang. She turned to face him, her brown eyes wide, her breath uneven. "What did you just say? Who are you, Alex?" was no longer the apprentice. He pulled a stack of papers from his hoodie pocket, Liam's original proposal emails and Apex debt records. He placed them on the dough table right in front of her. Julian Croft, CEO of Aura. And I owe your brother and you more than you know. The kitchen suddenly felt claustrophobic. The sweet scent of yeast couldn't drown out the pounding of Julian's heart. Ilara stared at the papers. Her eyes reddened, but she held back tears. Her voice was hoarse-choked, like a knife scraping dough from the table. When did you find out? A few days ago. I checked the system. I saw how Liam was robbed of his credit, how this company backed him into a corner, and how you've carried it all alone, keeping this recipe alive. Ilara let out a dry, joyless laugh. Too late. That story's buried. I don't need your pity. I just need this oven, a few quiet hours, and the smell of butter at the right temperature. Julian placed his hand on the table, blocking her trembling reach. He lowered his voice, almost a whisper. No. You need the truth. You need Liam's name etched on what he created. And you need freedom. Aura needs to be cleansed of this dirty blood. A single tear fell onto the dough beneath Ilara's hands. For the first time in 8 years, the icy wall around her began to crack. She whispered, her voice breaking into fragments. Liam risked borrowing from Apex to save his bakery when they rejected his recipe. He thought he'd get a bonus pay off the debt. He died, and I took it on. I thought keeping this recipe alive was keeping him alive. Julian looked straight into her eyes, unwavering. We'll make it right, I promise. No one will steal the soul of Phoenix Brioche again. He gently squeezed her hand, for the first time, not as a CEO and a baker, just two people sharing a secret and an unshakable debt of honor. 9:00 a.m. the next morning, floor 48, the largest meeting room at Aura Artisanal. The familiar scene, a long glass table, black leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows opening to a sun-drenched Manhattan view. But today, Julian Croft didn't sit quietly listening to reports. He stood tall, dressed in a sharp black suit tie, neatly knotted. Beside him, Ilara Vance, still in a flour-dusted apron, hair tied high, eyes shadowed from a near-sleepless night. The large screen behind them displayed the first slide, Phoenix Brioche, the truth. The board members filled the table, some joining via video call. They muttered in confusion upon seeing Ilara. Julian began, his voice icy. We're not here to discuss revenue. Today we're discussing how Aura Artisanal is a thief. The room fell silent, as if all oxygen had been sucked out. An elderly shareholder clutched her Hermes bag, eyes wide with shock. Julian clicked the remote. The screen flipped through slides: Liam Vance's email, the original recipe loan, records from Apex, the rejected proposal, and the bonus record for the former director who stole the recipe. Everything unfolded clear and undeniable. An older board member's voice trembled. Julian, what the hell are you doing? If this gets out, Julian cut him off, his voice like a blade. It's already out. I've sent the full file to the New York Times. If any of you plan to bury this further, call your lawyers now. An old man's hand shook as it reached for his phone, then froze under Julian's gaze. The air thickened with tension. Everyone breathed heavily, but no one dared cough. Ilara glanced at Julian, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but resolute, each word ringing clear. I'm not asking for money. I don't want shares. I just want Liam Vance's name on what he created. That's my family's legacy. The only debt of honor you can still pay. The board sat in silence. No one dared meet her eyes. Julian lowered his voice, turning to Ilara, but his words stabbed at everyone in the room. If anyone objects, feel free to leave Aura Artisanal. I'll handle the press, shareholders, and customers myself, and you'll be the first names in the headlines." No one moved, not a single protest. The meeting ended in a silence, heavy as stone. But this time, Ilara didn't leave with her head bowed. She walked beside Julian, side by side. Behind them, the old wall of power began crumbling brick by brick. 1 week later, Aura Artisanal Soho. The shop opened at 7 a.m., as usual, but something new stood quietly at the bakery counter, a gleaming brass plaque engraved with the words, "The Liam Vance Phoenix Brioche," in honor of a true artisan. Customers paused to take photos, some pointing it out to friends, all whispering, "Who's Liam Vance?" But everyone who took a bite felt it today. The familiar flavor was richer, not because of the recipe, but because justice had been restored to the right hands. Ilara stood behind the counter, wearing a new apron. The words, "Head of Artisanal Innovation," were embroidered in gold thread across the chest. No longer a silent figure, kneading dough at 4 a.m. She was smiling, a real smile, the first in 8 years. Her hand guided a young baker's teaching how to twist buttery dough layers to rise evenly. Around them, the kitchen team buzzed lively as an art class. In the corner of the shop, Marcus, the arrogant manager, had been transferred to a suburban branch. No one mentioned him anymore. Julian stood at the end of the counter, keeping his distance. He watched Ilara from afar, hands in his jeans pockets, a faint smile on his lips. He knew financial compensation could never be enough. They had paid off Apex's debt. She had received a fair settlement. But what Ilara truly needed, and he did too, was to see the soul of Aura Artisanal come alive before their eyes. The line of customers grew longer, the scent of butterflower, the hum of ovens, the chatter and laughter all blended into a new symphony. A little girl tugged her mother's hand, pointing at the brass plaque, "Mom, who's Liam?" The mother knelt down, whispering, "Liam was the one who left New York with the best pastry. And that woman there, she kept it alive for 8 years." Ilara overheard. She turned to look at Julian. No words were needed. The debt had been paid. The debt of honor finally had been settled the right way. Another morning quieter in Julian Croft's private office on the 48th floor. The room, once cluttered with financial reports and profit charts, was now stacked with printed emails from hundreds of small bakeries across America. Unknown bakers, family-run shops, culinary students, all sent recipes, ideas, and thanks inspired by one story, Vance and Phoenix Brioche. Julian leaned back in his chair, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. His laptop screen displayed the Vance Foundation for Culinary Innovators, a new fund launched by Aura Artisanal, named after Liam Vance, to support emerging artisanal baking talent. He slowly opened a small parcel. Inside was a perfect Phoenix brioche, wrapped in pristine parchment paper. A folded note accompanied it. "Thank you for giving us back the flame." Julian held the pastry in his hands. He brought it close, inhaling the warm, buttery aroma. It was no longer just a profit-generating product on the books. It was a promise to keep the true legacy alive, never to be betrayed again. On the desk, a thick file plans to restructure Aura Artisanal from a chain of stores into a community of artisans. Julian marked through each soulless clause, each regulation he once believed was gospel. Every red pen stroke dismantled another brick of the old foundation. Outside the glass walls, New York City bustled on. But in Julian's heart, he knew he had built a new foundation, an Aura Artisanal, with a soul, not just a money-making machine. His phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Ilara, 4 a.m., "Shift tomorrow, kitchen's short-staffed. CEO up for kneading dough." Julian chuckled, typing back, "I'll bring coffee. You keep the flour. See you later." He set the pastry on the desk, right beside the old photo of his grandfather. For the first time, he understood. Legacy wasn't in quarterly reports, but in the hands of those who kept the ovens hot, no matter the hour. And that flame, this time, would never go out. Perhaps if you've passed by Aura Artisanal in Soho, you'd see just a fancy bakery with customers lining up to buy a brioche twice the price of anywhere else. But if you've heard this story about a corporate tycoon who ditched his billion-dollar suit to pose as a baker searching for the soul of his family's company, about a stubborn sister who quietly shouldered debt, preserving her brother's recipe for 8 long years, then you'd understand some things can't be bought with money. Honor, justice, and faith in the hands that create something good. The story of the Phoenix brioche isn't just about a pastry rising in the oven. It's proof that sometimes to save an empire, you don't need a CEO closing billion-dollar deals. You need a person willing to step into the kitchen, get their hands dirty, and call the truth by its name. If this story touched, you share it. Believe that somewhere there are always people quietly keeping the flame alive. And if one day you find yourself lost, remember a warm pastry, a lit bakery kitchen, and everything can start anew the right way. Thank you for staying until the end. Follow Toch Story to not miss the next tales.